Beyond the buzzer, inside the game, this is Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
Hey, another Monday. Glad you're here with us on the Sports IQ. Larry Smith, our producer, Tony Cordero, our editor, Joshua Ewing. We are thrilled to be here for another week. And an hour today, an hour tomorrow. We do it every single day. And we should remind you as well, you maybe hear us on radio. Also, we are on podcast if you can't get us on radio. And we're everywhere. We're on Spotify, Apple, you name it. It's just what we do. We do it here every day. And we have a lot of fun doing it. That's the big thing. Great show today coming up as we get down to, because of some of the rivalry games, for some teams, their conference schedule wraps up this weekend. And one of those teams is Georgia Tech. Chad Bishop from the AJC is going to be talking to us here about the Yellow Jackets in just a couple of minutes. Big game this week against Pitt. Of course, next week it's against Georgia. We'll get the conversation there from the Flats about what they've got going on. And women's hoops as well. UConn women, defending national champions. Maggie Vanoni covers the Huskies for the CT Insider, and she's joining us in the bottom of the hour to talk about the Huskies and life at UConn without Paige Bueckers. As they move on, as Geno Auriemma does, he turns out All-Americans, pro players, and they keep right on winning. It's just what they do there in stores. So she's going to join us here in just a few minutes. Hopefully you had a great weekend. Great weekend here. A little personal news. My son moving into his first apartment, just graduated from college. Kind of a cool thing. Got a chance to see my mentor. We all have somebody that means something to us, that gave us our first job and our career, etc. That guy was in town. I'm in Lexington, Eastern Illinois, at Kentucky. And so Mike Brad, Illinois Radio Hall of Famer, was in town, spent time with him before the game, and that was really cool. I hope that if you have not lately, you get a chance here in the next several weeks before the end of the year, spend some time with somebody who means something very special to you. Quick headlines, by the way, let's get to it. Hottest team right now in the NFL is the Denver Broncos. Big step towards winning the AFC West with that 22-19 walk-off win over the Kansas City. Will Lutz with a 35-yard field goal as time expired to make the difference. The Broncos now have won 8 straight. The Chiefs, I don't know what's going on. 5-5, having lost 2 straight, and their next 2 games are against, in order, the Colts, Cowboys, Texans, and Chargers. By the way, the performance of the day has to go to the Bills' Josh Allen, coming off that disaster of a performance last week against the lowly Dolphins. Allen put the other 52 players on the Bills roster squarely on his back and just willed them to a 44-32 win over Tampa Bay. It was a pair of 6-3 teams coming in on a day that the Bills' ragged defense gave up 202 yards on the ground to a Bucky Irving-less Tampa team. It was Allen who accounted for 6 of the Bills' scores. Number 17 with 3 touchdown passes, ran for 3 more to push the Bills to the 12-point win. The first-place battle in the NFC West going to the Rams, 21-19, as the defense picked off Sam Darnold 4 times and forced a fumble recovery to lead the team to the 2-point win. Josh Meyer, a chance to pull the rabbit out of the hat at the end of the game, but his 61-yard field goal was not short, but it was wide. Steelers played the second half of their game against the Bengals without Aaron Rodgers, who suffered a wrist injury in the first half. Mason Rudolph came on and led 2 long scoring drives. The Steelers managed to remain atop the AFC North with a convincing 34-12 win. And don't look now, folks, but the Chicago Bears, yes, say it again, the Chicago Bears are sitting atop the NFC Central. The Bears, Cairo Santos, kicked a 56-yard field goal in the final minute. Chicago getting the win over their rival, Minnesota, 19-17. Almost to Detroit there. The Bears, amazing, plus 16 in turnover margin, and that's led to much of their success. And the last 7 games, though, will tell the tale of the Bears season. They play Pittsburgh, then travel to Philly, then Green Bay, and then finish the season hosting the Pack before traveling to San Francisco and then at home against the Lions. So, but again, Chicago right now, boy, what a first year it has been there with the new coaching regime. Again, I go back to, again, more than a decade since they fired Lovie Smith after a 10-6 season. I say again, who fires their coach after 10 wins? The Chicago Bears do. And they've had only 1 double-digit win season since. It appears they could be right now on their way to changing that. Getting into college football once again, because it is that time, as we talked about, just 2 weeks left in the regular season, if you will. And man, one of the teams we're watching They control their own destiny as Georgia Tech. And back with us once again on the show, Chad Bishop covers Georgia Tech for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Chad, good to talk to you. We've talked a couple of times already this season in terms of what the Yellow Jackets were capable of, and here they are right now. Again, their destiny in their own hands. Win this week at home against Pitt, and you've got that spot in the ACC title game.
That's exactly right. It's funny how this has all played out in a chaotic ACC conference. You know, they used to call it the chaos of the Coastal Division in the ACC. Now it's the entire conference. I mean, there's still, 6-7 teams mathematically alive to make the ACC title game, but Georgia Tech is one of those, even with a loss to start the month at NC State. If they take care of business against Pitt at home Saturday night at Bobby Dodd Stadium, they will punch their ticket to Charlotte. Who they play, who knows really at this point, but they don't really care as long as they beat Pitt to get there. What an accomplishment that would be for Brent Key in his third season with the Yellow Jackets.
Yeah, to think of what this program, we've had winning campaigns and successful, but not to this level in decades. I mean, you got to go back to the 90s. You talk about that loss at NC State. I know that losses are never good, right? But was it a good thing in terms of maybe a wake-up call, kind of get guys' attention, getting into the stretch run?
I think it can be both. I think it was good in that sense. Brent Key even said after that loss, probably the best thing that could have happened to the team. And I've joked a million times. Sometimes I think Brent Key, sort of like Nick Saban, almost likes to lose a little bit to show his team that they're not all that, to sort of slap them around in practice and say, see, I told you guys, like, we're not the best thing since sliced bread. You guys need to step it up a little bit. But on the flip side, I think that loss at NC State sort of gave some teams maybe some blueprints. I mean, look what Boston College did to Georgia Tech's defense. I mean, they were one of the worst offenses in the ACC and really sliced up that Tech defense. So I think there's some alarm, there's some concern there. But at the same time, Tech did beat Boston College. They won by 2 points. They got out of there with a win. That's all that matters. Now it's just a matter of continuing to figure out a way to do it, shore up that defense, and try to play your best football here the last 2 weeks of the regular season.
We've talked a lot about Haynes King, and, I was just hearing some coaches over the weekend talk about when you have a senior in their final games and they all have NFL aspirations and scouts are watching how you perform in these moments. How do you perform in November when maybe the weather isn't ideal or you've got something on the line? Obviously, he was a Heisman candidate early in the year. Probably not going to happen for him, but talk about just even his maturation this season that's helped Tech get to this record.
Yeah, it's been impressive. The first couple years on campus, folks probably don't remember when Haynes King in 2023 sort of emerged on the scene. He was more of a passing quarterback, threw the ball a ton, really wasn't relied on in his legs. And then last season, obviously dealt with some injuries and was sort of finding his way. And Brent Key has made mention a lot of times, a lot of games, Haynes King probably felt he had to do it all on his own and really didn't have enough of a supporting cast around him. This year, I think he has really embraced, all right, if I have to put the game on my shoulders, I will, but I don't necessarily have to time and time again. And I think that's why you've seen him, win the game against Colorado, lead these game-winning drives against Wake Forest and Boston College. And just time and time again, no matter the situation, there doesn't seem to be any pressure on the kid and seems to begin to thrive in some of these high-pressure situations. So I have yet to see him press. I don't think he's going to do that against Pittsburgh or Georgia down the stretch, or if they get to a title game or a playoff game. He seems to be really comfortable and really confident in his element right now. And that's why, to your point, he's a Heisman Trophy candidate.
Yeah, no question. It's funny, just numbers don't tell the whole story, but you've covered Georgia Tech for a long time. Tony and I, familiar with the Georgia Tech program for a long time. We've watched it from the periphery. They're in Atlanta for decades. Strange to see a Georgia Tech quarterback throw for over 1,000 yards over 3 games. That's exactly what he's done. All of a sudden, he's putting up these, like you mentioned, early on a passer, a lot of running right now. But he's gone to the air as well these past few games.
Yeah, he's over 7,000 for his career now at Georgia Tech, just over 30 games. I mean, a lot of these guys, started for 4 years. Yeah. Excuse me. And, he missed 2 games last season, missed a game this year. So, yeah, it's a different era, right? And teams play 12 games now instead of 11. But everybody focuses on Haynes King's ability to run. But, man, the guy has gotten so good at his completion percentage. He's going to set a program record in completion percentage. doesn't turn the ball over. I mean, his last interception was a Hail Mary at NC State, so you can't really count that one. The kid has just been on fire throwing the ball, and nobody really talks about it or watches it because of what he does with his legs. So he's become an outstanding passer, moving up those record books. Is going to go down as one of the all-time greats. Again, only playing a little over 3 seasons at Georgia Tech.
Yeah. So as we mentioned this weekend, as we talk here with Chad Bishop of the AJC about the Georgia Tech program, going in one loss on the season, and that is again a couple weeks ago at NC State, but a big game this weekend at Bobby Dodd against number 22 Pitt. Just laid out for us. What does Georgia Tech have to do to get this win?
They got to play defense, man. The defense has been MIA the past couple games, and Pitt with quarterback Mason Heinzel and the way they throw the ball around, I think they're number 2 or number 1 in passing offense in the ACC. That sort of spells doom for this Georgia Tech team because they have not stopped anybody. CJ Bailey and NC State made them look really bad. Dylan Lonergan in Boston College made them look really bad. So they got to figure out some things this week. And I'm not asking that Tech defense. Nobody's asking them to shut them down to be the 85 Bears. But they got to make a few stops, right? Because this Tech offense is outstanding, and more times than not, they're going to put points on the board. So this Tech defense has to figure out something to do against Mason Heinzel and this Pittsburgh offense because they're really, really good. Now, that being said, Pitt, turns the ball over quite a bit, commits a lot of penalties. They don't run the ball very well. So it could very well be a shootout. But that's a dangerous way to live if you're Georgia Tech trying to make a title game in a college football playoff. So they got to go back to the drawing board defensively, I think, this week to figure some things out.
Yeah, you look at that and giving up an average more than 3 touchdowns per game in ACC play. That's the most among the conference contenders. When you look around right now, Virginia at 6-1, obviously Pitt 5-1, need to get this win for that reason. SMU 5-1. Like you said, we don't know who's going to be there. Have you had the time to figure out the tie breaks in terms of what happened? So we'll say Tech wins and there's 7-1 and their spots there. Of the other 3, do we know how the tie breaks fall yet?
I don't know specifically for every team. I think Virginia has the best path. Miami is still alive. They have 2 losses, but still alive. Pitt definitely still alive. They would need to beat Georgia Tech and then beat Miami to get in. Crazy enough, I checked into this morning. Georgia Tech loses to Pittsburgh. They're not completely done. There'll still be a path in. Crazy, right? At 6-2 conference. I mean, it's wild. And a lot of people brought up the fact that a lot of teams haven't played some of the teams at the top, and a lot of the teams at the top have only played the teams at the bottom. Yeah. So there's a lot to be said. A lot of teams are off this weekend. Virginia only has 1 conference game left at Virginia Tech. Miami has 2. SMU has 2. There's a ton to be decided. So from Georgia Tech's perspective, right, just beat Pittsburgh, let everybody else duke it out the final 2 weeks and see what happens. But it's going to be chaos. And I think worst case scenario, right, for the ACC is you have a team that's probably deserving that gets left out of that title game. But they're crossing their fingers that this all kind of works out cleanly and they have maybe 2 1-loss teams in that title game.
Yeah. It feels like this work, but then again, this year, who knows? I mean, we've seen it all right now, right? One thing that we were talking about last week on the show, that going into last weekend, there were 23 Power 4 teams and Notre Dame that all had 2 losses or less. So all those. My point was, if your team right now has 3 losses going into last weekend, you're not going to the playoff. You have no shot. So just stop with the dreaming. It's nice, but shoot for a 9-3 season and go from there. It's not going to happen. But I think at the same time, the next piece of this, now that we're in year 2 of the expanded playoff, and we'll see how it all falls out, I'm wondering how much stink will be raised by people, because with the way this is set up, and it's not going to change, teams are never going to play the same teams year in, year out. You're going to play a different set of teams in your conference each year. And so I think the consistency is going to be even harder with that because, Georgia Tech's playing this slate this year. The next year, they'll play a different slate. And it's that with every school. Is there an answer to this? What have you guys talked about that in the press box, the conversations you've had?
The answer is to break all these conferences down and reset them to the way it used to be. I mean, ACC with 17 teams. I mean, I think Texas A&M, right, is taking a lot of heat because they're not playing a lot of the top teams. We talked about Georgia Tech. They haven't had to play Miami, Louisville, SMU, Virginia, the teams at the top of the conference. Now, last year they did, and the year before that they did, and next year they got to play Tennessee and Colorado again. There's going to be a lot to be said about schedule. So the problem is all these conferences wanted to have these mega conferences and these giant conferences, And it sort of backfired a little bit because now you're going to have teams that are, like you said, 11-1, 12-0, 10-2, but you're going to have teams that are maybe 7-4, 8-4, and had to play a way more difficult of a schedule. You look at the standings now, I mean, Texas and Tennessee out of the SEC, 3 lost teams that certainly have an argument. But you take a team like a BYU or a Georgia Tech, just as strong as an argument. You know, they've won games. How can you penalize team for winning games? So it's crazy, and I don't know if there is an answer or what the answer is outside of, can we just like reset this thing and go back to 18, 10-team conferences and get away from these massive conferences? But that's not going to happen. So that's something only I can dream about.
Yeah, we still have the possibility, I guess, of a 16-team playoff that we know is inevitable. It's going to happen at some point, and I think that's still out there. I still go back to, I know that there's kind of a 50-50 in terms of the way it was received, but the Big Ten Commissioner, Tony Petitti, talking about doing like an internal playoffs within each conference, and I think that may go to where if you finish in your top 4, then you've got a semifinal round and then a title or some kind of plan. But I think that, and also again, that also creates. Look, if let's say next weekend, you had the semifinal weekend, right? Where you had, listen, would we all watch the top 4 teams of each of these 4 conferences play? Damn Skippy, we'd watch. There's no question. No offense to anybody else, but maybe we go to that in terms of determine that way. If you are that 4th team that maybe doesn't have a shot with 3 losses, you still have a chance with this.
Yeah, and I'd love to see the subjectivity taken out of college football, but that's never going to happen because nobody's even, right? Like Georgia is not the same as a Georgia Southern, right? And Texas Tech is not the same as a Texas State. There's never going to be the NFL model where if you win your division, you make the playoff, or if you get a wild card berth. So unfortunately, that will never happen. So there's always going to be whose schedule is tougher, which team has played a tougher conference opponent, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So again, what the answer is, I don't know. Expanding the playoff, you just keep expanding. Where do you cap it? There's always going to be arguments of who played a tougher schedule and who has more talent, blah, 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 blah. Again, I'd like to see more objectivity in it, but it's probably not going to happen. So we'll just have to live with what we got.
Yeah, it is what it is. I remember the Big East going to 16, 18 teams, what it was 20 years ago, and Jim Boeheim complaining the first year that you didn't get in because we won 10 games in the Big East. Yeah, but you didn't play the top teams. You played Brown twice in the non-conference. So yeah, exactly. Before I let you go, we've got the big game next weekend, of course. We should remind it's not at Bobby Dodd. It's at Mercedes-Benz, Georgia and Georgia Tech. What is the hype like there in Georgia for this game? The Bulldogs have ruled this rivalry for a number of years. Last year was a fantastic game. Most of the nation rooting for Georgia Tech in that one. I can't wait to see this game in the Dome with these 2 programs, both looks like at the moment headed to the playoffs.
I'm a big metal music fan, and if you've ever watched a metal concert and seen the mosh pit, I sort of envision fans of both sides just waiting on the side, waiting for that music to drop. Because if Georgia Tech beats Pittsburgh and is 10-1, Georgia, who they have Charlotte, I think this weekend, they're going to be 10-1. To have those 2 teams colliding in Mercedes-Benz Stadium with all that's at stake is just going to be one of the biggest, clean, old-fashioned hate games in the history of the rivalry. And that's saying something for a rivalry that has some big-time tradition. So I think a lot of fans are probably on edge, especially from the Georgia Tech side. Like, they have to beat Pittsburgh. They have to get past that because losing to Pittsburgh is really going to put a damper on that game from Georgia Tech's perspective, right? Like, could be knocked out of the ACC title game. As big as the rivalry is, it probably won't mean as much. But man, if they get by the Panthers and set up that showdown on Black Friday, could be 80, 90,000 fans in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. That's going to be an insane atmosphere.
Yeah. Cannot wait. Jealous that you're there and I'm not. But Chad, listen, always appreciate your insights and you taking a few minutes with us. Man, enjoy this run, these last couple of games here in the season. And we do believe going beyond that, it's going to be a fun ride.
Yeah, let's chat in the postseason, all right?
Definitely will. Thanks, buddy. Take care.
See you guys. Bye.
All right. Thanks so much. Chad Bishop joining us once again, covers Georgia Tech for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Big game again this weekend. It is Tech right now, by the way, 15th in the country against number 22 Pitt. And then again, like you said, the old-fashioned hate game. It's a downtown Atlanta coming up. Georgia Tech next weekend. All right. It's a Sports IQ. Much more conversation coming up after this.
Fans of big sports radio and sports spectacular podcasts have a new home on the Chief Sports Network. Find your favorite programs and content all in one place by downloading the Chief Sports app in your mobile device. Created in South Carolina, the Chief Sports Network is the home of an expanding network of live and podcast format programming. It is also the home of one of the leading national college football podcasts, JC and Morgan, hosted by ESPN's Mike Morgan and 24/7 Sports' JC Sherbert. Download the Chief Sports app for free and find all of your favorite programming under one easy umbrella. Thanks to all of our markets for your loyal support of Big Sports Radio and our Sports Spectacular podcast, and we look forward to connecting with you anywhere in the world on the Chief Sports app.
You're listening to Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
Well, college football now, the AP rankings and coaches rankings coming out yesterday. Not much change at the top. I mean, Texas A&M, by the way, hadn't talked about that, down 30-3 at halftime at home to South Carolina and outscore them 28-0 in the second half to steal victory away from the jaws of defeat, 31-30 to remain undefeated, 10-0, and remain at number 3 in both polls. Georgia now number 4 in the AP. Ole Miss 5, Oregon 6, and then Texas Tech, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, and Alabama coming in, rounding out the top 10. Alabama falling 5 spots after the big loss to Oklahoma that kind of muddled the picture a bit. Look, we'll talk more later. I mean, Alabama, come on. I mean, how do you now look at that team and say they're not a playoff team? They're still very much a playoff team. Sorry, just that I don't see how you think otherwise. When you take a look at the SEC standings right now, obviously the Aggies still there on top, and now it's Georgia Tech, Ole Miss, Alabama, all with 1 loss. But again, Alabama has the head-to-head that they did beat Georgia. So we'll see how all this plays out here over these next couple of weeks. A&M 10-0. They got the 2 games left, including playing Texas coming up here at the end of the season. Some other notes to get into. By the way, look forward to the real rankings, if you will, the college football playoff rankings, the ones that matter in terms of the playoff. That comes up tomorrow night. More conversation to come on that. A couple of other notes as well in college football for this weekend. It looks like the ACC right now, we just talked to Chad, is a one bid league, which is why that the Saturday game with Georgia Tech is even more important. Look, can you be a 2-bid lead? Do you leave out a Georgia Tech team that finishes 11-1 with a season-ending win over Georgia, but then loses to a team in the ACC championship? That's a 2-loss Georgia Tech team, but how do you leave them out? Again, we've talked before. I think if you make your ACC championship game, make your conference championship game, that puts you in. You're one of the top 8 teams if you make that team. You can't then drop out and have somebody else who didn't have the extra game, who couldn't lose because they weren't on the field, replaced by that. That's just the way I feel. We'll see how the committee goes, and I know producer Tony enjoys. He agrees with me as well on that. So we're going to talk later on here this week with Adam Lichtenstein, who covers Miami Hurricane. And I'm going to ask him this question. What happens if a 2-loss Notre Dame team and a 2-loss Miami team are both up for the final spot in the playoffs, that 11th spot, the 12th spot going to the group of 5? What happens in that situation? Look, Miami beat Notre Dame head-to-head to start the season, right? And it's the biggest game that either team has played. Notre Dame's other loss was in week 2 to Texas A&M, which has gone on now, again, to be one of the last 3 undefeated teams left. Those are 2 good losses, I guess, to Notre Dame, but you did lose them. Miami beat you. So, again, we'll ask Adam that question later on this week when he comes on the show. Couple of coaching news. So there's some fresh rumbling, that James Franklin is in conversation to go to Virginia Tech. If you haven't been paying attention, this has been going on for weeks, really almost immediately once he was fired from Penn State after the loss at UCLA. That was a shocker coming off the playoff bid last year. This was kind of an assumed destination for him. So I'm not sure that it's a shocking thing now, but I guess there is some fire to the smoke, if you will, that it appears that maybe his next destination. Some other things I've seen out there that he will not be going to Arkansas after having some conversations there. One coach not leaving as well, even though they have got to do some wins here to get to become bowl eligible, is Maryland. They made the decision on Sunday that Mike Locksley will return for the 2026 season, coming off the 24-6 loss at Illinois on Saturday. But the powers that be there in College Park saying they will invest more money into the program. They will not change their coach. They'll invest more money. They've already turned Cole Fieldhouse into they completely gutted that building years ago and turned it into a state-of-the-art football practice facility. But again, investing more money in terms of NIL, et cetera, wink, wink. So there's that. Another coach apparently not going anywhere is Kenny Dillingham, the Arizona State coach, led them to a Big 12 title last year. Still want to call him in the Pac-12. Big 12 title last year. A team winning again this year. They just beat West Virginia 25-23. He dismissed any rumors of him looking anywhere. He said, quote, "This is home." Whether he means that here in the offseason, we will see, but trying to keep his name out of the conversation and stick only to the games as they are. Okay, let's talk a little women's hoops up next. It is Maggie Vanoni talking UConn women next on the Sports IQ.
Hey, airline travelers, let's say you have a problem and you need to change or cancel an existing airline reservation. What do? Well, Skywatch is a free service that can help anyone with any airline reservation fix it. Whether you want to cancel it, change your dates, or add passengers, we can help fix your airline reservations so you get exactly what you need. We've updated our computer database and now have access to every airline around the globe. So now you can make one phone call regardless of who booked your airline tickets, and we'll change it, cancel it, and fix it for you. We know the insider secrets to fixing reservations that the airlines don't want you to know about. So if you need to cancel, change, or modify an existing airline reservation, call Skywatch right now. It's a free call, so let us fix it for you. 800-413-7158. 800-413-7158. 800-413-7158. That's 800-413-7158. Packages start at $29.99 a month with signed agreement. Restrictions apply. Speak to a representative for complete offer details. See Vivint.com for license details. Terms and conditions apply.
Homeowners, if you're looking for the best in home security and smart home technology at a price you can actually afford, we have great news. Now you can get Vivint's award-winning home security systems starting at about $1 a day. U.S. News and World Report has recognized Vivint as the best professionally installed home security system of 2022. And right now, you can get Vivint's home security technology for about $1 a day. Plus, get free professional installation from a licensed technician. Protect your home and loved ones for as low as $1 a day. Call right now for your free home security consultation.
800-613-8053. 800-613-8053. 800-613-8053. That's 800-613-8053.
You're locked in to Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
Women's college basketball, obviously all eyes every year. You've got to pay attention to UConn just because they're UConn. And this year, because they're the defending champion. Joining us to talk about the Huskies right now, Maggie Vanoni. She is with CT Insider, UConn women's basketball beat reporter. Maggie, good to talk with you. Welcome to Sports IQ for the first time. Let's talk about, first, as we were mentioning before we came on, the big difference between you for UConn basketball now compared to last season.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I guess, like you said, the biggest difference is there's no Paige Bueckers, right? You know, she was the star of the show for the last 5 years, but even when she wasn't playing and she was injured. And now the Huskies have to figure out who are they without her? What do they look like? Who's going to run the offense? Who is the team leader? Because she did just as much off the court as she did off the court in terms of bringing everyone together, keeping everyone poised and calm. So that's definitely the biggest question heading into the season is who will step up and knowing they can't replace her, but how do you make up for some of the things that she did? Other than that, they returned last year's Final Four most outstanding player, Azzi Fudd, National Freshman of the Year, and All-American Sarah Strong. So they are still very loaded.
That's the thing. It's UConn. I mean, yeah, you lose a Paige Bueckers who goes on not only to be the outstanding, player legend, wins that led the team to a title. Then she goes on to Dallas on a team that really just never got out of the gates. She misses, obviously, the coaching staff already dismissed after 1 year, wins Rookie of the Year there. But if there's any team that can do this, any program, it's UConn with Geno Auriemma, a legend in his own right, one of the great coaches in basketball, regardless of where he's coaching.
Oh, absolutely. I think, you look at the teams who have repeated as national champions. And it's so hard to do now just because there's so much more parity than it was maybe during, the early teens. And the last team to do it was UConn. And that's when they won 4 in a row. And no one else has ever won 4 in a row. So I think, Gino knows how to get the best out of his players. He has this particular group, including Paige, has went through so much injury. They went through so much just adversity that he knows how to get the best out of them, and he knows when to push, when to pull back. We've talked about already this year, how are they dealing with the pressure of being defending champs, of knowing people see them as repeating. How do you deal with that? So this is his 41st year in stores. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to get the best out of his players, and I'm sure that they will make another deep run when it comes to March.
Yeah, think about that. This run of his began during the Reagan administration. That's how long he has been there in stores, and obviously, responsible for this program and all of its success. What has changed with Geno Auriemma while we're kind of on that in terms of the last to win back-to-back titles? He went a few years. UConn went a few years without winning at all. As other teams came up, LSU. South Carolina, obviously, Kim Mulkey, she was at Baylor, won some. But what changed in recent years that was able to get the Huskies back up to the top of college basketball after being away for a few years and not managing to do that after winning so many championships over the years?
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of, like I said, they had so many injuries these Paige's first 4 years, right? Like, she was out for basically a year and a half, and then AZ Flood was out for basically 2 years. They had games where they had to postpone because they did not have enough healthy bodies. And there's that, and there's also just not having the right talent, right? Like, they've had a bunch of talent, right? They've had the greats, Brianna Stewart, Sue Bird, Diane Taurasi. They've had Nafisa Collier, but they haven't had quite that edge player, I think, until Paige, until AZ and Sarah Strong, and that kind of closed. That was kind of what was missing, is having a three-headed snake, as you will, that all had, great weapons, that all had their own talent, that complemented each other on the court, right? You have Sarah, who is a do-it-all post player. You have Paige, who is a do-it-all guard, who can even play in the post if she needs to. You have AZ, who is so much more than just like a sharpshooter as well. And I think the three of them really complemented each other really well. And that was the first time where last season they had, some injuries, but not a lot of injuries. They were able to actually build chemistry of who was on the court and who was available. And I think that was the secret key of just having everybody healthy at the right time, having the right pieces, having it all fit together. I mean, a lot of it is luck too. Gino would admit to that, but I think it all came together at the right time last year.
Yeah. Was it important to have somebody other than Paige be the most outstanding player in the championship year, somebody who now is back next year, so you can say, yeah, we lost Paige, but Sarah's here and AZ's here, and now we're adding a freshman like KK to the mix? Was that important to have somebody else win that to carry this into next year?
So I think it was more just how the votes finished, with AZ getting more of the votes during that period. And AZ did have a really good, Final Four. Paige had a phenomenal, first 3-4 rounds. I think she set the record with 44 points versus Oklahoma. She was unstoppable the first 2 rounds. So I think it was just how the votes turned out.
Okay, that's fair enough. We'll talk about this year's team and KK Howard coming in and how she looks like has fit in very nicely here at the very beginning.
Yeah, KK Arnold?
Yes.
Yeah. She looks way better than she has these past couple of years, knowing that now the offense is in her hands. She's kind of taking over for Paige, for Caitlin Chen, for Nika Mule, and knowing that, okay, now you are the point guard. That means now you are like the leader on the court. How are you going to bring this team together during lulls? How are you going to bring this team together to not get too high when you're on a run? How are you going to start the energy? And she has really shown these first 3 games that she has that maturity, that she has that power and that leadership to really be a sounding voice. When she first came in, her freshman year, UConn had 6, 7 players available just because of injury. So she was forced to just get thrown into it. She was a starter along with Ashlyn Shade. And last year she was back on the bench because they had healthy players. And so her role has changed a lot. And she's learned how to adapt, how to just be whatever the team needs in that moment and not take it personal. And I think that has helped her see all the pieces of a team and how they each need to work together and whatever it needs to do to be successful and look for. And so I feel like this is going to be a really good breakout year for her.
Yeah, and I apologize. I it's called her a freshman, and she's not. That's my mistake. The landscape now is so competitive. We talked about some of the teams we just saw last week. UCLA beat North Carolina, and it was a fantastic game. Love Lauren Betts' game. I'm a big fan of hers. USC's always in the mix. Texas has now stepped up. South Carolina was there. LSU, the other teams. How has the women's college basketball changed because there is now such parity? I mean, for a long time, it was, it was, well, I'm older than you. Back in the day, it was, Tennessee and Louisiana Tech and maybe Georgia. And then here comes UConn. It's UConn, Tennessee, and now South Carolina. But how do you feel like the game has evolved now that you have so many more players that are competing on this high level?
Yeah, I think it's evolved completely, right? Like I said, repeating as national championships is way less common and way, way harder now. Now there's no longer just 1 or 2 great hubs where all the recruits are going, right? Recruits are going everywhere. The top recruit went to Oklahoma, right? Like you're seeing people who are choosing schools not just based on, I don't want to say legacy, but not just based on what has been, right? Like they are helping other programs grow and succeed. UCLA, this is a huge revival for them right now. There's schools that are coming up, like obviously now I can't think of anything, but UNC is coming up, Duke is coming up. You're seeing these teams that have kind of not quite been there, and now they're having recruits that are really lighting a fire in that program and are drawing attention. They're competing hard and they're winning good games. And I think that's the biggest difference is we're seeing more parity. We're seeing more recruits go everywhere, and that lights that fire, and that brings more attention to these programs. That makes them more successful. That makes the competition better, right? It's more and more in March Madness now in the women's game. You're seeing those lower seeds kind of get close to upsetting those higher seeds, where we didn't really see that before. And I think that's just more shows the parity of the game and the growth of the game.
Are we still feeling the effects of Caitlin Clark, even though she's been gone now for a couple of years, and just the attention, the eyeballs, the record TV audiences, obviously the WNBA, the growth there, unrivaled. We've talked many times about the professional game in terms of it's not just WNBA and European leagues and whatever. We actually now know names of European leagues, and the Project B starting next year, and Unrivaled is planning something coming up in the future. Athletes United, they're unlimited. I mean, there are so many other pro programs. Again, all that I think goes back to elevating the profile of the college game as well.
Absolutely. I think, what Caitlin did was so unseen before, and it brought so much attention to both the college game and the WNBA, the pro level. And I think you still see that. I was watching the Iowa game yesterday, and I heard that they still have their streak of sold out home games, right? Like that's great that they are still bringing in people, even though she's not there anymore. And I think you're seeing just more and more attention across the nation when it comes to college basketball and the WNBA. With last season, the season before, when Caitlin's first year, all these teams were seeing an increase in sales, in tickets, in attendance because of wanting to just experience, the hoopla of it all. They wanted, even if Caitlin wasn't playing their team or she wasn't on their team, they wanted to experience what the WNBA was, with the hype, why it was so fun, why it's so exciting. And I think you're seeing that absolutely in the college game. Paige was a huge proponent of that, especially for the UConn and this, East Coast market of bringing people to the game. Having that fandom kind of go online as well. People are following these players who have become celebrities in their own rights, unlike ever before. And I think we're going to see that grow continuously from here on out.
Yeah. You mentioned Iowa. That's a great point that we've talked to, our friends, some Iowa insiders that follow the Hawkeyes and reporting on them. And I've talked about one of the issues that led to Iowa dismissing the men's coach, Fran McCaffrey, is that they were getting about a third of the crowd of the women because all the disposable income was going into the women's program. People buying those tickets, not so much for Iowa, a team that was roughly just over 500. Speaking of, though, you've got UConn, where you have two men's and women's programs that are back again. Once again, we've seen this before with other coaches for the men. Geno's always been there. Back on top in terms of, you've got UConn 1 year removed from back-to-back titles, the men, and then now the women. What is it like there in Stores to have that kind of basketball royalty with both programs at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, that's why they call it the basketball capital of the world. It's definitely the appreciation for good basketball is so high here in the state. You also have the WNBA's Connecticut Sun, which,
Right.
except for last season, have been one of the best teams in the W.
Right.
And so this state knows good basketball and they appreciate it. And when you go to a game, whether it's the Sun or UConn men or UConn women, there is such a fandom for it. And there is such a passion for just being there, watching it, for players, whether, if you're talking about the Sun, they have fans of the players who are not even UConn related, right? Like the fans or players who've just come in. And I think that's just really wonderful and shows just how important that sport is here and how much it can grow here, and how much it is just beloved by fans everywhere.
Yeah, that's why I'm hoping the Sun owners find a way to keep the team there in Connecticut. There is such a very unique fan base.
Right.
As you know, Uncasville is not easy to get to, and yet they draw huge crowds all the time. So yeah, hopefully
Right.
they can find that out. UConn always with a tough schedule. Already you opened with the Louisville over in Annapolis, the game that was moved from the air base in Germany because of the shutdown. Up next, you've got 14th ranked Michigan still on the way. USC, Texas. I'm sorry, not Texas, Iowa. If I can only read, Tennessee is still on the way as well. Huge because you got Notre Dame too. But I think it's big because the Big East women's programs overall down a little bit. So I think it was even more important to schedule this kind of national schedule against so many ranked teams as I just mentioned.
Absolutely. I mean, that's kind of what UConn's schedule has been like these past few years since rejoining the Big East, is you have these huge heavy hitters in the non-conference, and then you have the Big East and the first couple of years in the Big East, it was really competitive. You had Maddie Sechrist at Villanova. You had their start Marquette. You had a really good Creighton. You had their starters for all 5 years, right? Like you had really good competitors that would really give UConn a good game. And this year, it's not quite the same. A lot of those a lot of the stars in the Big East have transferred out, and it's kind of waiting for other teams to kind of step up. Seton Hall was really good as well this year, but I think UConn's non-conference is always tough, right? That's how Geno likes it. He likes to test his players often and early so that when it comes to March Madness, it's not something they hadn't seen before. They know how to handle it. They get a little sense of what every team is going to throw at them. I think that's really important, especially as defending champs. This is the first year UConn's not playing South Carolina in the regular season in a while. So it's kind of, how do you get that same kind of level of competition before you head into the conference season, before you head into March Madness?
Yeah, absolutely. Maggie, one more question before I let you go. Obviously, UConn is UConn. They're going to be in the mix in March. We know that. What's the one thing as you watch this team that is a concern for you that they really need to work on to be hitting their peak in March?
I think a lot of it's cohesion, right? I think what we've seen, this is obviously being taped before the Ohio State game, but it's just in the first 3 games, they've had a really good defensive energy and not so much offensive energy. Or in the season opener, it was kind of the other way around, right? They had so much good offense, but not a lot of good defense. So where does that kind of balance come from? Is that starting with the upperclassmen, starting with the starters? Is that just they have so much depth? Is that starting with balancing their rotations? So I think that's going to be the biggest kind of question mark of how do you manage all that? It's a lot of newness for them to have 15 players. It's a lot of newness to have depth on both sides of the ball. So how do you just find that right balance? And that's going to lead you to a good March run.
Yeah, absolutely. Maggie Vanoni, always good to talk with you. You survived your first time at Sports IQ. You okay? Need a cigarette?
I'm great.
Okay.
This is great. Thank you so much.
Great conversation. Great to have you on. Hopefully you'll have time to join us again as we are just beginning the season, and we know that UConn will be a team we'll talk about quite a bit, and hopefully we can call on you to get your insights again for
Absolutely.
us.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much. Maggie Vanoni joining us once again. She's with the CT Insider. She's the UConn women's basketball beat writer. Great stuff right now as a Huskies. Again, next big test up here for Geno and the ladies there at UConn. Michigan coming up later on here this week. Stay with us. We've got much more to come. The conversation continues here on the Sports IQ. Back here on the show, producer Tony's got his mic on now. And Tony, we've talked a lot of college football here with Chad Bishop talking Georgia Tech earlier. Also broke down the AP rankings right now. I want to get your thoughts on where we are. Texas A&M. Where would we be sitting right now on Monday if A&M and Alabama both had lost at home on Saturday?
I mean, that would have been just crazy at that point, right? Look. A&M held serve. You give Mike Elko a ton of credit. He has done a fabulous coaching job. If I had a vote for Coach of the Year, Mike Elko would be getting my vote for Coach of the Year from Texas A&M. Just how things have played out this season. And for those folks, who are looking at Alabama, I read a bunch of things online, different message boards that I follow, and taking a look around. Alabama doesn't pass the eye test. Man, you need to have your eyes checked.
Yeah.
Because your vision ain't 20/20, pal. This is an Alabama team that last I checked, that so far in the games that they've played, their record is just full of ranked teams.
Yeah.
Like, how do you keep them out? They've played number 5, number 16, number 14, number 11, number 11 again. Because Tennessee and Oklahoma both occupied the 11th spot when they played them respectively. That's 5 ranked teams in 12 games. Okay, yes, they have some easy games. Yeah, they're playing Eastern Illinois this Saturday. Okay, I don't care. They have played as tough a schedule as any team in the country. They've shown that they can play with any team in the country. And to me, the 2 losses, as long as they beat Auburn, that should secure them a spot in the playoff. Period. End of story. I'm sorry.
Oh, there's no question. We've talked before that Alabama is the one team, and this to your point, and we've discussed it several times here in the show throughout the season. They're the one team right now. They are 6-1 in the SEC. They play 8 games. Of those 7 games they've played, all 7 were against teams that are or have been ranked at some point in the season. Period. And that includes even Auburn. Auburn's not right now, but they were at one point. So I don't know. There probably is a team out there that can say that. I don't know that. Haven't run across it. If there was another team, to your point, they're not playing the dregs of the league. They're playing teams that have been considered at one point to be among the best teams in the league.
Yeah, exactly. They've played as good a conference schedule as anybody has played in the last 10 years, right?
Yeah.
And they have beaten just about all of those teams. Yes, they lost to Oklahoma. They lost by 2 points. Yeah. They didn't get blown out by Oklahoma. It's not like they were never in the ball game. They had chances. They couldn't convert. The Oklahoma defense had some great stops and made some great plays. Yeah. That's all it came down to. But to leave this Alabama team out, and look, people listening to the show, people who have heard the podcast, know I'm a Notre Dame fan. So I'm not an SEC homer.
Yeah.
They deserve a spot, period. That I can't put it any other way. They deserve a spot based. Now, they have to beat Auburn to clinch it. They're not going to lose to Eastern Illinois. We know that.
Right.
They have to beat Auburn to secure that spot. A loss to Auburn might change everything because that would be a bad loss on the last game of the regular season. And, what you do right before the committee meets sometimes carries a little more weight than what you did early on in the year.
Yeah. Well, and then it's if you get to a 3-loss team, it's hard to leave out a 2-loss Notre Dame team or a 2-loss Miami team, like we talked about before with that. But you look at it right now, 4 wins over the top 16 in the country. Number 5, Georgia, 16, Vanderbilt, 14, Missouri, 11, Tennessee when they played them. And then the loss to number 11, Oklahoma this past weekend. But yeah, and I think right now you beat Auburn. They didn't play Ole Miss, so I think they'd have the tiebreak over. They had the tiebreak over Georgia, no question. If there's a 3-way tie, I don't know how that plays out. This is where it gets creative. But I'm with you. I don't know how you leave out a 10-2 Alabama team with this resume. We talked before about there are some two lost teams that may not make it. I don't see how Alabama is one of them.
Absolutely. I mean, if the committee is serious about looking at strengths of schedule and looking at the entire body of work, you can't tell me that looking at the entire body of work that this is not one of the best 12 teams in the country at Alabama. I don't buy it.
Yeah, I'm with you. One other quick thought. BYU right now at number 11 in the AP poll. They make another crack, I think, at Texas Tech, possibly here in the Big 12 title game. Boy, what if they lost to Tech twice and they get shut out to go 11-2 and not get a chance to get in?
And your only two losses are to Tech. That might be a little tough to swallow, but then you got to look at the overall conference of the Big 12. Were they that strong this year, or are they a little down from last year? There's some real bottom feeders at the bottom of that Big 12 conference. So that might come into play when they get down to splitting hairs about that two-loss team.
Yeah. They did beat Utah early in the year. Utah is at 8-2. Cincinnati is ranked, and that's who they play, the Bearcats, here this weekend. So it gets interesting, and the conversations get a little more complicated as we get here toward the end of the season. All right, our moment of awe is up next.
Are you tired of your website making your business look bad? Is your current web developer dropping the ball? Let's face it, if your website isn't making you money, it's broken. Let Neon Rain create a website that turns your visitors into customers. Neon Rain has worked with hundreds of businesses across North America, building custom websites and applications with modern designs that are easy to update and work well on mobile devices. They can do it for you too. What sets Neon Rain apart? They actually deliver on their promises. Call today for a free consultation. 303-957-3092. That's Neon Rain at 303-957-3092. Or visit them at neonrain.com.
Time now for a moment of awe, and it goes to Woods doing it on the golf court, but not Tiger. Of course, he's recovering from back surgery. His son, Charlie Woods, shooting a 4-under par 68 to lead the Benjamin School to the state title down there in Florida. Now, by the way, if you haven't heard of the Benjamin School, all of Jack Nicklaus's kids went there, okay? This is one that has been, it is one of the golf schools in Florida. But Charlie Woods, only a junior, hasn't picked a college yet. But oh my goodness, someone's going to get a great talent. Charlie Woods, making like dad, leading his team to the state championship. That's our moment of awe. We appreciate our guests stopping by today, and appreciate you as well. This is Sports IQ. Make it a great Monday. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to Sports IQ with Larry Smith, Monday through Friday. Continue the conversation at Sports IQ LS. We'll see you next time.